Hey guys! Today we're diving into another truly horrifying case. If you want to support my channel, make sure to subscribe and stay active. It really helps me out. I'd be super grateful for that. Let's get started. On November 7th, 2019, Marta Calvo Buron failed to show up for a meeting she had arranged with her mother. Her phone was unreachable, and her messages went unread. The last thing Marta did was send her location from a small town called Manuel in the southern part of Valencia. At first, her absence seemed like a simple misunderstanding. Perhaps the young woman had just dropped off the grid, stayed overnight at a friend's place, or lost cell reception. But by morning, her mother's anxiety grew. The police response was indifferent. Only after several days would the full, horrifying truth emerge. Marta Calvo Buron, aged 24, was the eldest of 3 siblings. She worked in the hotel industry, but her real passion was beauty and aesthetics. She and her mother, Marisol Buron, had plans to open a manicure studio together. They already had found a location, and the lease agreement was ready to sign. The project was to be their shared dream. Marta and her mother had a close and trusting relationship. They spoke every day, exchanging many texts and calls. Marisol, a single mother raising 3 children and working as a warehouse supervisor at a supermarket, devoted herself fully to her family, especially to Marta. Her concern for Marta's safety was constant, though she never imposed authoritarian control. Their bond was grounded in love, not command. Jorge Ignacio Palma, originally from Colombia, was living in Spain without proper legal status. His criminal history, from small-scale drug transport to large cocaine shipments, was known to law enforcement across multiple countries. Despite repeated arrests in Spain and Italy on drug-related charges, he somehow managed to avoid deportation and continued his illicit activities. On the surface, he appeared respectable and confident, arousing no immediate suspicion. At first glance, these 2 people had nothing in common. Marta lived openly, made plans for her future, while Jorge moved in criminal circles, concealed from authorities, connected with underground networks. Marisol, Marta's mother, never imagined where her daughter's acquaintance would lead. What began as an ordinary chapter, without any sense of looming danger, would ultimately spiral into a crime that sent shockwaves through Spain. Valencia, Spain's 3rd largest city, sits on the country's eastern coast, a bustling hub of tourism, commerce, and transportation. It's a place where the vibrant surface of everyday life intersects with a darker undercurrent of underground activity. Thanks to its location near the sea and its well-developed roadways, Valencia has long served as a key waypoint for the movement of people and goods, including significant shipments of banned substances coming in from Latin America. But beyond the sunlit plazas and crowded markets lies a hidden side of the city, a network of illegal housing where undocumented individuals can quietly exist, often completely under the radar. It was in this shadowy substructure that Jorge Ignacio Palma, living in the country without legal status, managed to move freely, renting properties, making connections, and avoiding scrutiny from law enforcement. About 37 miles southwest of the city, away from the noise of the tourist scene, lies Manuel, a sleepy rural town with a population of just over 2,500 people. Sparse infrastructure, limited police presence, and a remote setting made it the kind of place where someone could disappear for a while, or make others disappear. Palma chose a house in Manuel specifically for these reasons, knowing the chances of police patrols or neighborly interference were slim. November 7th, 2019 started like any other day for Marta Calvo Buron. That morning, she messaged her mother to let her know she'd be canceling their planned meeting. The reason? She had arranged to meet someone else. Her mother, Marisol Buron, didn't press the issue. She trusted her daughter. Marta was independent, capable, and at 24, more than able to make her own decisions. Although Marisol felt a little disappointed by the sudden change of plans, she didn't show it. Marta didn't explain much, and Marisol didn't pry. She simply wished her daughter a good evening. The visit to Manuel wasn't unusual for Marta. She used dating apps from time to time, and she'd previously met people through them. It seems Jorge Ignacio Palma, someone she had met before, had reached out again. Marta, feeling safe and in control, agreed to see him. She let her mother know she'd be heading out of town, but didn't mention any names. On the day she vanished, Marta left Valencia by train, heading toward Calera. From there, she took a taxi to her final destination. One seemingly minor action would later become a crucial piece of evidence. Marta, ever cautious, sent her mother a message containing her live location. She did it voluntarily, simply as a way of confirming her route, a habit born from her close relationship with her mother. That message would prove vital in the investigation, pinpointing her last known whereabouts. The rental property that Jorge Ignacio Palma had quietly secured ahead of time, intentionally avoiding attention. That day would be the last time Marta Calvo Baron had the freedom to make plans, talk to her family, and live her life on her own terms. Neither she nor her mother could have known that a tragedy was already unfolding in the shadows. The morning of November 8th, 2019, began quietly for Marisol Baron. There was no message from her daughter, something that would normally arrive like clockwork. At first, she didn't think much of it. Marta might have been tired from the night before, maybe she got home late and decided to sleep in. It wasn't unusual. Still, as the hours ticked by and no reply came, Marisol sent another message. Again, no response. By the afternoon, calls to Marta's phone wouldn't go through. The line was unreachable. Later, messages on WhatsApp remained unread. That's when worry started turning into dread. Marta was always careful. If there was a delay, especially in an unfamiliar place, she would have let someone know. The day passed in anxious silence. Marisol tried to stay hopeful. Maybe Marta's phone died. Maybe she just lost track of time. But as night fell and the silence deepened, it became impossible to ignore the truth. This wasn't just a delay. Her daughter's disappearance was starting to look like something far more serious. After 24 hours with no word from Marta, Marisol knew she couldn't wait any longer. She decided to follow the only lead she had: the geolocation Marta had sent before her trip. It pointed to a specific house in the small town of Manuel. She made her way there. Once she arrived, she knocked on the door. A man answered. He was neat, calm, but his eyes kept darting away, avoiding direct contact. That man was Jorge Ignacio Palma. Marisol asked him directly if he had seen her daughter, explaining that Marta had shared this address before disappearing. Palma denied everything. He said he had no idea who Marta was, claimed no one had visited him, and acted like it was all news to him. He was polite, but clearly nervous. He seemed eager to end the conversation as quickly as possible. Marisol pressed him. She asked him to double-check. Maybe he was mistaken. But Palma just repeated that he didn't know the girl and that he had been alone all night. His words were flat, rehearsed. The lack of empathy, the way he distanced himself, it didn't sit right with her. But standing there, just a mother without any official authority, there was nothing more she could do. Leaving the house that day, Marisol felt it in her gut. This man knew something. She didn't have evidence. She didn't have backup. But she had a mother's instinct, and she was certain this man had something to do with her daughter's disappearance. That same day, she reached out to Marta's close friends. She showed them the address from the location Marta had sent before she vanished. One of the girls remembered Marta mentioning someone she'd met, a man who lived outside the city. But she never gave his name. With no answers at the house and nowhere else to turn, Marisol headed straight to the local police station in Valencia. She expected urgency, a swift response to a clearly alarming situation. The officer on duty listened, asked a few routine questions, and then got to the one that would define everything. "How long has she been gone?" Marisol answered, "A little over a day." The officer shook his head. "That wasn't enough," he said. "Marta was an adult. Adults have the right to go off the radar if they choose. And unless there were signs of immediate danger, it didn't qualify as a suspicious disappearance." Marisol tried to explain. This wasn't like Marta. She always stayed in touch. She answered messages right away. She never left her mom in the dark, not even for a few hours, let alone a whole day. This wasn't a matter of personal freedom. This was a red flag. But the officer wasn't interested in nuance. He dismissed her concerns. In his view, nothing indicated a crime, and without that, they couldn't check the address or open a case. Marisol pushed back, hard. She insisted they at least document her report. The officer agreed, but the paperwork was bare bones. It left out crucial details: the visit to Manuel, Jorge Ignacio Palma's suspicious behavior, the geolocation Marta had voluntarily sent. He stuck to the basics and kept his distance from anything that sounded like speculation or work. The result: no site visit, no phone calls, no follow-up, nothing. The police simply logged her report and told her to wait a little longer. Marisol walked out of that station stunned, not just by her daughter's disappearance, but by the wall of apathy she'd just run into. It felt like the system, the very one meant to protect and respond, had looked the other way when it mattered most. Realizing that waiting could only increase the danger, Marisol took matters into her own hands. While continuing to push for an official response, she began acting independently. She filed repeated reports with various departments, demanded follow-ups, and urged the authorities to take the situation seriously. But the response didn't change. Bureaucracy stood firm. Without concrete proof that Marta had vanished under violent or suspicious circumstances, the case wasn't considered a priority. Days passed. Marta remained unreachable, and the police continued treating her disappearance as a voluntary act. This lack of urgency gave Jorge Ignacio Palma exactly what he needed: time. Time to cover his tracks. Time to plan. The delay in launching a full-scale response would later be one of the most heavily criticized aspects of the case. A missed opportunity to prevent the worst, where institutional inaction may have played a decisive role. Eventually, the case was transferred to Spain's national law enforcement agency, the Guardia Civil. Public pressure and relentless efforts by Marta's family finally pushed officials to change course. The local unit of the Guardia launched a full investigation, starting with the location Marta had shared before she disappeared and retracing her final known movements. Agents made their way to the house in Manuel, the same address linked to Jorge Ignacio Palma. Even from the outside, the property raised red flags. Every window was shut tight. Curtains were drawn. The home looked sealed off from the world. When officers asked Palma to let them in, he refused, citing his legal rights. The standoff delayed the process, but with a formal report on file and now probable cause, they obtained a search warrant. Inside, agents immediately noticed signs that something was off. The kitchen and bathroom showed evidence of intense cleaning, tiles recently scrubbed, a strong odor of cleaning agents in the air, and some decorative pieces partially removed. In one of the rooms, they found women's clothing, garments that could have belonged to Marta. More disturbing were the contents of the trash bin outside the house, paper towels with odd stains. Investigators collected fabric samples, strands of hair, and other biological material. On one wall, faint marks resembling bloodstains were visible under certain lighting. Every finding was carefully documented and sent off for forensic analysis. Alongside the search of the property, investigators from the Guardia Civil pulled cell tower data to trace Marta's last known activity. What they found was chilling. Marta's phone had lost signal right near Palma's house, and the final data ping aligned exactly with the geolocation she had sent to her mother on the evening of November 7th. From that point on, there was complete silence. No further texts, no calls, no movement. It confirmed what many feared. Marta had indeed been at Palma's house, and her phone went dark immediately afterward. With mounting evidence, authorities officially reclassified the case. Marta was no longer just a missing person. This was now a possible homicide investigation. His behavior only raised more red flags. His statements were inconsistent. He couldn't keep his timeline straight, and his alibi fell apart under questioning. He seemed evasive, nervous, and now potentially dangerous. The investigation escalated fast. Forensic experts and DNA teams were brought in. What had started as a missing persons case had now become a full-blown criminal investigation with strong indications that Marta Calvo Buron may have been harmed inside that house, the last place she was known to be alive. As suspicion closed in, Jorge Ignacio Palma vanished. His home in Manuel remained an active crime scene, but the man himself was nowhere to be found. Investigators discovered that shortly after initial interviews, Palma had quietly left the property. He stopped answering his phone, disconnected from known contacts, avoided familiar locations. It was as if he'd dropped off the face of the earth. For nearly a month, there was no sign of him. None of the addresses he'd previously used showed any activity. Friends, acquaintances, neighbors, no one had seen or heard from him. Authorities believed he was actively hiding, doing everything he could to avoid being held accountable while the investigation ramped up around him. Then, on December 4th, something no one expected happened. Jorge Ignacio Palma walked into a Guardia Civil station, voluntarily. After weeks on the run, his sudden return made no sense, and what he did next stunned investigators. He said he wanted to confess. During questioning, he gave his version of events. According to Palma, Marta had passed away from an overdose while the two were together at his home. He claimed they had used banned substances voluntarily, and her death was sudden, with no signs of violence. In his words, panic took over. He didn't know what to do, so he made the decision to dispose of her body. According to his own statement, Palma told investigators he had dismembered Marta's body in the bathroom using whatever tools he had at hand, then disposed of the remains in trash containers scattered across different parts of Valencia. He insisted he was acting in shock, claiming he never intended to harm her and admitting guilt only for hiding the body, not for causing her death. From the outset, investigators were skeptical. His version of events never seemed credible. His actions after the incident, destroying evidence, going on the run, and refusing to cooperate, didn't fit the profile of a man who had simply panicked over an unexpected tragedy. On the contrary, the way he concealed the body showed planning, consistency, and method, hallmarks of intent, not of a spontaneous reaction. Forensic experts also doubted that an overdose could occur without visible signs, and with no body to examine, a full autopsy was impossible. This gap became the biggest obstacle to uncovering the truth, leaving Palma's claims effectively unverified. Investigators dug deeper into Palma's past. His criminal record, his involvement in trafficking banned substances, and earlier suspicions of violent behavior all undermined his credibility. Taken together, the flight, the improbable explanations, the attempts to cover his tracks, police increasingly leaned toward a theory of deliberate homicide disguised as an accident. His so-called confession didn't close the case. Instead, it marked the beginning of a far more intensive probe into his role in Marta Calvo Buron's disappearance and probable death. When Palma's photograph was released to the public, it triggered a wave of new reports. Women who had never connected themselves to Marta's case began coming forward to police. One of the first was a woman named Irinea. Seeing Palma's face on TV pushed her to break her silence. She recounted a nightmarish experience after meeting him through an escort site. Palma had brought cocaine, a banned substance, pressured her to take it with him at his home, and then, according to her statement, committed an assault with intent, ignoring her resistance and even her loss of consciousness. He showed no concern for her condition and later dropped her off as if nothing had happened. After one woman came forward, more followed. Several others reported their experiences to the Guardia Civil. While the details varied, the patterns were strikingly similar. Jorge Ignacio Palma followed a disturbing routine, targeting women, arranging meetings at his residence, introducing or pushing banned substances, particularly cocaine, and then either losing control or acting with cold calculation. In most of these encounters, the women's safety and health were severely endangered. A clear pattern began to emerge: online meetings, cocaine, aggression, and a disturbing lack of remorse. These testimonies became critical to expanding the charges against him, suggesting that Palma acted deliberately, hand-picking his victims and repeating the same methods time and again. The investigation into the disappearance of Marta Calvo Buron soon led authorities to two previously unconnected deaths, both now believed to be tied to Jorge Ignacio Palma. Arliene Ramos, a Brazilian woman, had died in a hospital after being dropped off by a man who quickly vanished. Although her death was initially linked to a cocaine overdose, medical records revealed injuries inconsistent with a mere accident. That man, confirmed later through security footage and vehicle records, was Palma. Lady Marcela Vargas, a Colombian national, was found deceased in a rented apartment. An autopsy confirmed the presence of substances in her system, but also signs of physical trauma. Phone data confirmed that the last person she contacted before her death was Jorge Palma. Both women had worked in the escort industry. Investigators now believe Palma deliberately targeted women in that line of work, offering banned substances, luring them into isolated spaces, and waiting for them to lose consciousness. Once they were incapacitated, he would either leave them to suffer the consequences of the substance or subject them to violence, making no effort to get them help. These two deaths had occurred before Marta went missing. Yet at the time, law enforcement didn't see the connection. It wasn't until Marta's case gained national attention that the puzzle pieces began to fall into place. What had once looked like isolated incidents were now seen as part of a chilling pattern. Over the course of several years, Jorge Ignacio Palma operated with a clear and deliberate method. He sought out women, particularly those offering escort services through online platforms. Each case had one element in common: cocaine, which Palma allegedly provided in capsule form. These capsules were often intended for internal use, a method that produced a rapid and dangerously intense effect, frequently leading to unconsciousness or uncontrollable reactions in his victims. Medical reports in the cases of Arliene Ramos and others confirmed the presence of dangerously high levels of cocaine in their systems, doses that would have been lethal even for someone with a high tolerance. Investigators also uncovered a disturbing pattern in Palma's digital footprint. His messages followed a clear, calculated script: identical language, similar offers, and consistent setups disguised as fun nights and mutual enjoyment. In reality, these invitations often led to the use of banned substances and violent encounters. The repeated cycle, from meeting and offering substances to victims losing consciousness, followed by non-consensual acts and deliberate concealment, left little room for doubt. This wasn't random. It was methodical. Authorities concluded that Palma didn't act on impulse. He followed a system. He had developed what he believed was a reliable, low-risk strategy to overpower his victims. He never adjusted his behavior to the situation. He stuck to the same playbook, confident that it worked. The trial of Jorge Ignacio Palma began in 2022 and quickly drew national attention. Media outlets packed the courtroom. Live coverage, rows of reporters, and public interest groups all added to the intensity. But it was the voices of the victims, and Marta's mother, Marisol Buron, that truly shaped the course of the proceedings. Survivors, who had never spoken publicly before, described their experiences in detail. Each account pointed to Palma's cold demeanor and complete lack of empathy. Despite differences in time and place, their stories echoed one another, showing a consistent, calculated pattern in how he operated. Marisol Buron delivered a powerful testimony. The courtroom was silent as she spoke, her voice steady, her grief unmistakable. She didn't ask for revenge. She demanded truth and justice. Prosecutors referred to her statement as a central piece of the case, giving emotional weight to the hard evidence. Palma's defense was contradictory. He admitted to meeting Marta and using substances with her, insisting her death was the result of an accidental overdose. Regarding the other cases, he claimed all encounters were consensual and the outcomes tragic, but unintended. His legal team tried to portray him as cooperative, but the evidence painted a different picture. The prosecution presented multiple charges. Investigators had established a pattern, not just of behavior, but of intent. Repeated acts, identical methods, a clear objective. Every claim was backed by documentation, medical forensics, message history, location data, and witness testimony. The case laid bare the truth. Jorge Ignacio Palma was not a man who made one mistake. He was a man who systematically caused harm. The trial lasted several weeks. Dozens of witnesses took the stand. Each incident was examined in detail. But the key message, again and again, came down to this: the danger of repetition. Jorge Ignacio Palma had operated over an extended period. He showed no remorse. He made no effort to stop. That, prosecutors argued, made him a continuing threat and justified seeking the maximum sentence. Throughout the proceedings, Palma tried to paint himself as a man trapped by circumstance, overwhelmed, broken, and full of regret. His demeanor in court, quiet voice, long pauses, lowered eyes, was paired with statements about a tragic accident and unintended consequences. But to those in the courtroom, it felt rehearsed. His emotional displays, especially when Marta Calvo Buron's name was mentioned, seemed calculated, like an actor playing a part. Palma denied everything. He insisted he never meant to cause harm, that he didn't understand what was happening, that he was under the influence and confused. His narrative wasn't built around truth. It was designed to control the public's perception. His so-called remorse lacked substance. He avoided specifics. He sidestepped direct answers. Psychologists brought in to assess his behavior noted signs of narcissism, manipulation, and a clear lack of empathy. Despite his attempts to appear broken and remorseful, his words felt hollow. He even shifted part of the blame to his victims, claiming they had voluntarily participated in everything, a claim that directly contradicted their testimonies and the physical evidence. Experts described him as a man of contradictions. On the outside, he appeared polished, polite, and confident, someone people might trust. But behind that facade was something much darker. Calculated, cold, methodical. Each encounter was pre-planned. He chose his victims carefully, women in vulnerable situations, and knew how to suppress resistance. His tears in court weren't seen as signs of pain, but of manipulation. During victim testimonies, he remained stoic. No empathy, no emotion, no eye contact. His repeated attempts to justify his actions only deepened the distance between him and the truth. To the judge, the jury, and the public, it became increasingly clear. The man who sat quietly in court was not who he pretended to be. That mask, the soft voice, the downcast eyes, the false remorse, began to crack under the weight of overwhelming evidence, survivor testimony, and the undeniable pattern of his actions. In May 2022, Jorge Ignacio Palma was found guilty on all charges, including the killings of Marta Calvo Buron, Arliene Ramos, and Lady Marcela Vargas, as well as assaults against multiple other women. He was sentenced to 159 years in prison for those acts, which included murder, violent and sexual offenses, and crimes related to the distribution and use of banned substances. The court ruled that Palma acted deliberately, fully aware of the potentially deadly consequences of his actions. Significant financial compensation was ordered for the victims and their families, including €640,000 to Marta Calvo's mother, Marisol Buron, for emotional and psychological damages. Palma's refusal to accept responsibility, his attempts to shift blame onto the victims, and his complete lack of remorse were viewed by the court as aggravating factors. These played a critical role in the severity of the sentence, even in cases where bodies had not been recovered or direct witnesses were absent. In July 2023, Spain's Supreme Court reviewed the case and issued a revised ruling. The justices found that the lower court had not adequately reflected the gravity of the crimes. As a result, Palma's sentence was upgraded to life imprisonment with a mandatory minimum of 25 years before eligibility for any parole consideration. Compensation amounts to victims and their families were also increased in several cases. The court reaffirmed the systematic nature of his crimes, the intentional planning behind each act, and the exceptional cruelty with which they were carried out. The justices concluded that Palma posed a severe and ongoing threat to public safety, and that rehabilitation was not a realistic possibility. Life behind bars was deemed appropriate for the scale of the harm he inflicted. The final verdict was more than just a legal conclusion. It marked the closing chapter in a story of deep and widespread suffering. After the sentencing, Marisol Buron's life changed forever. But instead of retreating into grief, she turned her pain into purpose. In honor of her daughter, Marta Calvo Buron, she founded an organization dedicated to supporting families affected by violence and advocating for systemic change. Marta's name has since become a symbol, not just of loss, but of resilience, resistance, and the fight for justice. Marisol launched a nationwide campaign pushing for legislative reforms, demanding tougher penalties for crimes involving banned substances and violence, as well as the creation of a public offender registry to prevent future tragedies. Her voice echoed from the halls of Parliament to protests in the streets. A mother denied the chance to properly say goodbye to her child was now fighting to make sure no other family would be met with the same cold indifference from the system. But the deepest wound for her remains the most heartbreaking. Marta's body was never found. The absence of a grave site continues to haunt Marisol, an open wound that never heals, a pain that never ends. She's been denied closure, unable to lay her daughter to rest. After the murder of Lady Marcela Vargas, her children were left orphaned. Their lives were turned upside down. No mother, no normalcy, no sense of safety. Relatives stepped in to raise them, but no amount of care could replace what they lost. Government assistance was minimal, emotional support almost non-existent. The same fate fell on the children of other victims. Some were too young to understand what had happened. Others would never forget that night, the one that changed everything. Fathers, brothers, and grandparents had to rebuild their lives from the ground up, now without the maternal warmth, care, and protection that had once been there. Their grief was compounded by endless court proceedings, interviews, and media exposure. These families didn't just lose loved ones. They were pulled into the eye of a tragedy that left lasting scars, especially on the children forced to grow up too soon, forever marked by Palma's crimes. Despite Jorge Ignacio Palma's confession to dismembering and concealing the remains of Marta Calvo Buron, her body has never been recovered. Authorities conducted intensive searches, sifting through waste, checking landfills, but no trace was found. The burial sites he mentioned turned out to be incorrect or had already been cleared. The lack of a body remains a significant obstacle. While the court has formally recognized Marta's death, the absence of her remains leaves the case feeling incomplete, justice unresolved. Palma, frequently contradicting himself and refusing to clarify key details, is believed to have deliberately misled investigators to delay proceedings. Marisol Buron continues her fight to bring her daughter home, even if only to give her a proper burial. For her, it's not just about closure. It's about restoring a sense of dignity, of final justice. Police have confirmed the investigation remains open and search efforts are ongoing, offering a small but vital glimmer of hope that Marta might still be found. Thanks for watching, everyone. Your support means a lot to me, and you can help my channel grow by hitting that like button, dropping a comment, and sharing this video. Your engagement really makes a difference. See you soon.